You're listening to Haze Radio Network, Cannabis Lifestyle Radio.
Business of Cannabis is brought to you by CashTech Currency Products, North America's leading cash management provider for cannabis retailers. Cash recyclers, smart safes, software and services, CashTech has everything the cannabis retailer needs to track, manage, and secure the cash earned in the dispensary. Don't take chances with your cash. Call CashTech and solve the problem. Visit www.cashtechcurrency.com to learn more.
You're listening to Haze Radio Network, Cannabis Lifestyle Radio.
This is the business of cannabis. And welcome to the business of cannabis. I'm Dave Sky, joined as always by my co-host, Matt Cook. If you have an interest in the sale and marketing of cannabis, if you're interested in learning about the technologies transforming this industry, if you're interested in gaining an understanding in the operational challenges facing cannabis retailers, well, basically, if you're interested in creating value and profit through cannabis, you turned into the right show. Today, we are speaking to Laura Bradley, who's the owner of The Bend and Behind the Bend. The Bend is the dispensary, and I'll let you guess where Behind the Bend is. Now, Behind the Bend, it's interesting because it's one of Canada's first cannabis lounges that popped up this summer, and we'll get into why Laura did it and how she sees the lounge business developing. Then we'll next speak to Art Stewart, a longtime management and growth consultant in the cannabis space, and we'll be picking his brain about the current and future state of the cannabis retail industry and what he believes cannabis executives need to do to be successful. Again, this is Dave Sky, along with Matt Cook, and this is the business of cannabis. So welcome to the business of cannabis. Dave Sky here with Matt Cook, as always.
Hi.
And our first, we're excited about our first guest. It's Laura Bradley of The Bend and Behind the Bend Cannabis, a dispensary and also a cannabis consumption lounge. Laura has an interesting background. She was in management in the licensed cannabis industry. And is a rather brave entrepreneur. And she opened up her dispensary during COVID. So we're going to talk about that.
Wow.
First licensed dispensary in Grand Bend. And has a second location that she's just franchised in downtown Toronto. And is looking to open up more cafes. So Laura, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Welcome.
So let's just start off in a general. Everyone has an interesting story. How did you end up becoming a sort of a cannabis entrepreneur, and then why Grand Bend?
Yeah, well, I've always been a cannabis enthusiast for medical and recreational reasons, and I followed the industry closely. I was with a licensed producer before my current role, so I was very in tune with what was going on and how the retail was going to be rolling out. So once I found out about the lottery system, I entered both lotteries. I lost, unfortunately, both of them, but then they launched the applications open for everybody. And I was one of the ones at 11:59:59 ready to put my app in.
Okay.
And it's been a dream ever since, but I decided to go into retail. I've always wanted to own my own business. I never really thought it would be retail because we didn't know this was going to be here, but it all fit with my interests, my passions, where it was going, the ability to connect with people in an area that I'm experienced. So it's been great.
And Grand Bend, is that just sort of where you live? That was your you
Grand
want to
Bend,
do local, or is that an opportunity?
Grand Bend, I frequented growing up. I grew up in sort of the London area for a portion of my childhood, so it was. I know the summer crowd. I know how busy it gets. I know the foot traffic there, and it was one of the last corners of Ontario that wasn't already saturated.
Right. For our American listeners, we're talking London, Ontario, which is about 2 hours west of Toronto. Grand Bend just being a little further than that. A nice little place you should all visit.
Absolutely. It's
nice
great
little
beach town,
summer town, little beach town. Yeah, it is.
Yep.
So tell us a bit. I'm very intrigued with this idea of cannabis lounges. I know you opened one, and what was that experience like? What hoops did you have to go through? And how do you see it developing? Because it's a huge issue, which is, how do people interested in cannabis, associate with each other without it being still kind of in the house or back alley stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the main thing that pushed me was my clients. My clients were really looking for a safe space to consume, and I'm the type of person that will go above and beyond, no matter, do whatever I can for the clients. So it started with that, and then exploring the options in Grand Bend. We're a tourist destination area, but not just adults. There's families, there's children. So just trying to find ways to be respectful of the families and the children that are around, and creating that space for my clients. But the rules, once I looked into it, there are no rules for it, and I realized how much of a problem this is. They kept doubling the issuances of licenses in Ontario, but we weren't addressing these other things. How are we dealing with intoxication and transportation, and how are we dealing with socialization in public environments? And so these kinds of questions haven't been answered yet, and I think the way to get them to the we've been dealing with so many things. COVID, there's a lot of priorities that you could argue would fall ahead of this, but in the end, we're talking about safety for our clients, and that's a priority for us. So I went ahead, I made sure I followed all the rules that do exist for Smoke Free Ontario Act, for Alcohol and Gaming Commission, for all the municipality governing bodies. And I kind of went ahead, I would say, without necessarily asking for permission. I just
that's the best way to do it.
Wanted to be smart about it. And I think the goal was to represent the way it can be done responsibly and push other people to do it and follow suit, because, we really can drive the conversation that way. And I think the more this is being talked about, the faster the rules are going to get written. So
you take us through then. Okay, I'm assuming you're not selling cannabis in the lounge, or am I wrong?
Correct.
And so this is a safe space. Are you selling alcohol?
A place where people can just consume.
Correct. There's no alcohol. We have enough bars in Grand Bend where they can easily just slip out and grab a drink somewhere. I foresee that if we will get consumption lounge licenses, I doubt it will come immediately with a liquor license. So I was being cautious that way, just trying to anticipate some of the concerns. We don't necessarily have a grip on how everybody is going to react when they're consuming both alcohol and cannabis. So our licensing programs, our Smart Serve, our Can Sell for our employees are not designed to meet these needs. So we've had to put in some of our own as on top of those licenses. But this is the type of conversation we need to drive so that somebody can write the rules and we don't have to be the ones guessing and pushing the limits.
So walk us through what the experience is like in one of your lounges. Like in your lounge, what can people expect? who should be coming, give us a bit of a background on that.
Yeah, well, we've had legacy lounges in Ontario for years. I've frequented some in London and Toronto and Hamilton, and they were wonderful, and they were really blazing the trail for this to come. But I really wanted to drive a space that was going to be much more similar to a restaurant, an alcohol environment, where people who don't consume cannabis still feel like they want to come socialize in this environment. And so my cafe is exactly that. That's the atmosphere, trying to be a little bit higher end, I guess you could say, welcoming for everybody. You can bring some outside food. We encourage you to purchase it from, obviously, our food stall, but you just need a government issued ID, receipt for any product that you wish to consume, and it should still have its excise stamp sealed. And then, we have games and all of the tools to roll and grind up your flour. We have a fire pit, so after 10 p.m. on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, we put on a fire. And if I'm there, I'm usually roasting s'mores for people, just having fun. Nice. We have music playing. We have lots of events. So we did movie night. It's really trying to drive a community environment in there and give the regular consumers all of the things that you would get kind of in other social environments where this one you could consume cannabis. So movies, we do a night market the last Wednesday of every month. There's we did a build your own dream catcher event. We were doing upcycle your jars and things like that. So just really trying to create activities that would normally be in other venues where you would drink alcohol or not.
Like a pub environment type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
So do you find that the people that are coming it's more recreational, or is it medicinal, or a combination of both?
In Grand Bend, I've seen we have a large tourist community, but we also have a large retirement community. So it's actually proven to be a great space for any of our clients that are new consumers, and they are looking for a little bit of hand holding. So sometimes we've seen, I haven't tried that. Do you mind if I go in the cafe? And then we have people there who are experienced and can make you feel safe and can walk you through it and really help with some dosing. Sometimes we have some elderly people who have trouble dosing the oils by themselves. So they feel comfortable in a safe environment. But then, after hours, we get the recreational that are either on their way to the bar or sometimes coming back. I purposely close early on the weekends before last call to avoid any double intoxication.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Problems where they happen. This is so interesting because it's all about, everyone's focusing on two things: the grow and not everyone. There's focusing on the growing and the purchasing, the dispensary. Yet this could be such a lucrative area, which is the experience. While dispensaries are focused a lot on creating an experience, but at the same time, sure, I'm walking in. You can create a good experience for me, but it's still a very business experience. I walk in, I buy my product.
It's transactional. It's
a transaction. Yeah. As opposed to selling food, as opposed to selling food, like a restaurant, like actual. And this might be where my actual heart would be. It's my lounge that I'm going to be loyal to.
Right. Absolutely. Your local pub.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Or pubs. I might have 2 or 3 locations. What do you want to do this week? Well, let's go to Grand Bend. Let's go to Behind the Bend and we'll chill out for a bit, or at the end of the night. And then maybe there's food. I contrast
or live music.
Amazing. And it can go in, but each one of those things is a big ask. Having live music is not easy either. It's a business. It's a separate skill set. if you think ahead a year or two, and let's assume there's no impediment to doing it, what would be your dream cafe? Would it be food oriented? Would it be entertainment oriented? A bit of both. What are your thoughts on that?
Well,
Too big a question.
without giving away the direction that I'd like to head.
Right.
This is, we need this, and I think everything that we see here is in suit of what's happening out west and what's happening in California, what's happening in Denver.
Right.
We're in Amsterdam. And if we follow that trend, California, it's coming. They exist.
Yeah.
This is the next step. So I would love to see a place where we could get, even my close family members questioned me when I said I'm going to be offering fresh, high-end food and not deep fried affair. And they said, but people who smoke weed don't want to eat that food.
I just want donuts.
Are you kidding me? How can we not cater to the people who are consuming something that might increase their appetite?
Yeah, exactly.
So I would love to see some fine dining restaurants. I would love to see some hotel spaces or motel spaces where people can start traveling and feel comfortable going to a place and not having to necessarily go to a smoking room, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or in the parking lot and at the convention where you're going to be meeting business, So these options need to come, and I would love to see them and be normalized.
We're talking here with Laura Bradley from the Bend Cannabis Company and Behind the Bend. Behind the Bend is the lounge brand. We've been discussing opening up lounges and what's and how that's going to develop across North America. It sounds like, and some of the decisions you're going to have to make in terms of what type of experience you want to bring to people. Let me change tracks a little bit and go back to your opening that dispensary. Take us through that experience and tell me, were there some mistakes you made, and what are the things you think you did really well in terms of some advice? People listening, going, a dispensary. Maybe I want to get involved in that. If
Absolutely.
I can make you think back a whole year, a year and a half. I guess.
It's been a whirlwind of a year. The retail side was very exciting, again, because it was a disappointment with the lottery system. What happened with the lottery system was you were to enter the lottery, you were securing your properties. So as soon as they canceled the lotteries, everybody who had already secured properties jumped right in and put their applications in. And everybody believed that, well, and why shouldn't they? My brand is going to win. My strategy is going to win. So by the time I got licensed, I was thankful that I was the first one in the county. And so I had not just Grand Bend, but surrounding cities and populations driving into Grand Bend to visit us. It was a long process. You have to be well funded to make it through that process. And it seemed like it's been a lot quicker now because they've put on more employees and they're licensing quicker and all of those things. But for me, it was a long process to get licensed. And then by the time we did, it was the shutdown and the lockdowns. So we dealt with it pretty well, I think. We were able to house less staff because of the lockdowns and not have anybody complain about that. But it allowed us to curate these relationships with the community in a level that I don't think we would have if there wasn't the lockdown.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
forcing you to slow down and actually.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
deal with your customers, which
we were so focused on there's no history. There's nothing to base it off. We're not opening an LCBO, and the one in Grand Bend for the last year sold more spirits than it did wine. So it was really, really getting to understand who our client base was, which was able to carry us through, and why we have such great inventory options for them. And we turn our inventory very well. We do take requests for them. And if we don't, we recommend products that are usually in the craft. We like to focus in the craft area.
Is that becoming a bigger and bigger part of your business? The I don't want to say luxury side, but more of the craft boutique product?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you find it? Yeah,
I come from the corporate licensed producer world, and as a consumer myself, I prefer higher end, hand trimmed, cured properly product. So I personally have been shopping the craft, and there's more and more options coming out now. It's really great. The frustrating part is that the brands, we are limited to purchasing through the OCS. So some of our brands, our favorite brands, have 5 or 6 strains that are available coast to coast, but we can only access 2 or 3 of them because that's what the OCS has chosen to offer to us. So that's been a little frustrating. They are, working with us, and they are listening. There's pilot programs on where we can start to work out these kinks. But being a part of that has been some growing pains. And I think that we've responded really well. I think that we've, by being in tune with our community and our clients and really understanding their needs, we've been able to overcome a lot of these challenges.
So on the product side, where do you see things going over the next, year, maybe 18 months?
I hope it goes craft. I hope it goes a lot more product strain offerings, product offerings. We're really looking to support the small family businesses now. They just have, there's so much passion in this community, and I really just want to support the passionate people in this community. And when you get the passion, you see it right down through the sales, through the product, through the packaging, through the customers, and the clients come back again and again, more than, over the moon. And there is always going to be a place for value brands, because not everybody can afford to spend that much money every day. But it's with the craft brands that you get the better experiences with the clients, because you're giving them a treat, it's a special occasion or this. And when you can connect on them in those occasions, that's where it's so rewarding. And I think if we can push that area, then it's going to be wondrous for the craft community and how that's going to grow in this industry.
That's one of the great questions, isn't it, in this business of is it going to be an alcohol experience? But that took, where it's dominated by a few companies, but that took almost 100 years to happen. Yeah. So there's a long time, but it's a different product. It's not the same economies of scale necessarily. Right. There's one thing to make champagne or scotch or wine. It's another thing to produce in a quality way an interesting product. Lots to talk about. Well, this has been talking to Laura Bradley, and check them out at www.thebendcannabis.ca if you want to check out their story. And if you're in Grand Bend, I encourage you to go give Laura a visit and check out her dispensary and her lounge. This has been very interesting. We're going to have to come back and see how you're doing. Because the lounge story is such a fascinating one, and I know it's just the beginning of it here in Ontario and across North America. Some jurisdictions may be being a bit ahead. Yeah, well, next time you're in the area, I would love to host you, and give me a heads up, and I'll make some delicious snacks. Sounds amazing. Good. Yeah, some fried. Yeah, but better not be fried. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you, Laura. Laura Bradley. Thank you for having me. The Business of Cannabis is brought to you by CashTech Currency Products, North America's leading cash management provider for cannabis retailers. Cash recyclers, smart safes, software and services. CashTech has everything the cannabis retailer needs to track, manage, and secure the cash earned in the dispensary. Don't take chances with your cash. Call cash. Cannabis is brought to you by CashTech Currency Products, North America's leading cash management provider for cannabis retailers. Cash recyclers, smart safes, software and services, CashTech has everything the cannabis retailer needs to track, manage, and secure the cash earned in the dispensary. Don't take chances with your cash. Call Cash. So welcome back to the Business of Cannabis. Our next guest, we're going to delve into some future gazing of the state of the industry in the retail cannabis space. In one guise or another, Art Stewart has been at the vanguard of executive C-level managing consulting with a focus on growth and business transformation. Currently, he's the managing partner at Strategic Impact Partners, which is a Boston-based firm. And while Strategic Impact services a wide range of clientele, Art has recently shifted attention and resources to the cannabis industry, of course, which is why we're eager to chat today. Art, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Glad to be here.
Welcome.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Dave.
So usually we like to start off with a softball question, but I'm not going to this time. I'll put you on the spot right away.
Hardball,
right off the bat. Yeah.
Bring it on.
Usually we just say, hey, like how did you get to cannabis? How does a dispensary, either a rec or medicinal, differentiate itself in an increasingly crowded market? I was just commenting to Matt the other day. I'm here in Toronto, and in one of the sort of trendier areas, in one block, there are 3 dispensaries. 2 of them are beside each other. So what kind of advice, what do you do?
That's a good question. I mean, we're focused most of our work on the retail side, and we consult across the value chain with MSOs and brand manufacturers and other kinds of ancillary companies to the cannabis industry. But we've been focused lately on retail clients because of our epicenter being in Boston. And as you know, Massachusetts is one of the most hot of the U.S. state markets these days for a whole range of reasons, not the least being that it's got the most new customer churn on an annual basis because of the university and college industry than any other market in the country. To say nothing also of the affluence and the wealth and the sophistication. It's a smart economy city. It's a top smart economy city like those around Silicon Valley and Chicago and Texas and North Carolina and some other emerging markets. But I think we're dealing with different circumstances than a lot of the other state markets that are coming online now, or even some of the more mature markets that don't have all of those particular kind of characteristics. But to answer your question, Dave, I think we are definitely, as an industry and in cannabis, moving from the MSO infiltration play, if you will, of establishing leadership in state market by state market with local footprints to a brand play. And what does that mean? Well, from our perspective, I think what it means is that there are emerging brands that have been producing great portfolios of product in their state markets of origin. They've reached their potential cap in those markets of origin, and they're now ready, like the MSOs were a few years ago, to do national plays and to bring those customer relationships and that brand affinity to new state markets. So the industry as a whole, we think, is changing and shifting, because the other thing too that's happening in Massachusetts is that most of the MSOs that want to get a footprint in Massachusetts are now here, right? They've come in, they've acquired distressed assets, they've helped in a partnership with some of the local entrepreneurs and early stage teams to stand up those local businesses, and in some kind of configuration, a JV or an actual roll up, they've established their footprints. So now we're looking at how do all of these different companies, with competing locations, begin to build a deeper sense of customer loyalty. And that gets to your question, and I think it's a grassroots thing. I think you got to start with managing to full optimization, the end-to-end experience, operationally and customer experience wise, of each local store. And if you do that well and you create a unique channel of repeat customers and deeper loyalty, then you can begin to attract some of the national brands that are trying to get into your market. And that's what we're doing with clients in Massachusetts right now, while you simultaneously, assuming you're a vertically integrated business, or you have a good, sourcing relationships with flower producers, that you create your own brand portfolio along with that, so that you can grow the diversity of the identity of your unique brand with the customers, because you're not going to be able to compete on location alone. I mean, as you mentioned, there's going to be stores everywhere, and we have a distance to go in Massachusetts before we have saturation anyhow. We're getting there.
Yeah, let me one more follow-up question, hardball follow-up question. So I'm hearing a slight dichotomy, and it's an interesting thing you brought up. So you're saying to a dispensary, you have to create this connection to your client, and that's going to be some sort of grassroots, real connection at the local level, like store customer experience. Yet at the same time, you're talking about that there's a value in having this brand. It's kind of, how do you have both at the same time? When I go into McDonald's, yeah, that's a national brand and I know what to expect. Is that what you mean? I'm going to create, it's hard to create a local experience and at the same time create a brand experience.
You're right. And, but that's what you got to do, because the customers on the local level, when they want to purchase a cannabis product at a retail outlet, are driven by a whole bunch of different reasons that they go to one dispensary over another. I mean, convenience might be one, hours of operation, all kinds of other things, but particularly product and pricing. And so how do you get them seduced into your location and your dispensary if you're not driving product quality, if you're not driving seduction around having the best products in all the different categories, and competing on pricing and specials, and then I think also creating an experience in that purchasing process when they come to your dispensary. Is it unique? Is the actual interaction and the whole visit aligned with the values of the products they're actually going to experience that they purchase at your retailer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, ask a tougher question, Matt. That we're going to have to upscale this.
No, I mean, it's like, why do people line up for the latest iPhone, right?
Yeah.
Because Apple has created this experience, and going back to I think it's Simon Sinek, start with why, right? And I think if dispensaries actually start with that premise and work their way back, they're gonna have more success than companies that just open or put a shingle up and say, we're open for business, right?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of being knowledgeable. So your interactions with a bud tender, that bud tender can be spontaneous but knowledgeable in their interactions with the customer. When there's questions, I mean, people come into retailers with health issues, healthcare issues,
Mhm.
that, it's not germane to only the medical dispensaries. And, so if you've got folks that are serving customers that are knowledgeable, that can have an informative conversation, uh, you know, that enables their customer base to get smarter about their cannabis consumption. Smarter customers about consumption will become customers that will experiment with a wider range of different delivery systems. Maybe you were a roll-up person, and if you encounter a bud tender on one visit that talks about the efficiencies and the discretion of using a vape as opposed to smoking a joint, you might convert, or you might widen your palate, so to speak.
Sure.
There's one example I think that plays into this, which is we are currently working with a very unique economic empowerment and social equity client in Boston who is about to, in the next couple of quarters, launch stores 2 and 3 in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They launched their first store in Metro Boston last year, and it's performing very well. And this particular economic empowerment company is drawing on their cultural heritage of one of the owners' previous businesses, which was a highly reputable and well-known music entertainment club in Cambridge, Massachusetts for almost 50 years. And that club closed, but this owner, who's part of the leadership team, is bringing those brand values of the integration of arts and culture for people of color, communities of color, because this is an economic empowerment business model, into the retail experience of their new cannabis stores. So they have live music on a regular basis. They have community events with food trucks in the parking lot. And they bring partner vendors in for product demonstrations and information. And it becomes a community building, total kind of integrated experience. It contributes to a significant injection in single day product sales. And it also contributes to finding producing a way for new customers to be visiting and getting introduced to their unique retail experience. So I think retailers kind of have to look at what are the ways that they can create a more end-to-end experience for each visit for every customer that correlates to what their brand messaging stands for and what they're trying to convey. I think the industry is heading very quickly towards, almost like a traditional CPG model, right? And so what do food and beverage brands do, right? What do CPG brands do? They have to distinguish not just on the taste, not just on the effect, not just on whether it's a health play in terms of the quality, but also in the experience of the consumption.
Right, create that story. Yeah, are some of your clients, do they have HR problems? It sounds like, is it a recruiting a problem? Do they have problem training people? Because every time I talk to someone on this show, I go like, okay, I'm going to have to revise my business plan because I haven't taken enough things into account, or my strategy of opening my store with orange colors, maybe not enough.
Yeah. I think that's a very good question. Yeah, I mean, I think all of these retailers are challenged. A lot of the clients we've worked with, because of the competitive employment environment in Massachusetts, are all paying above the new minimum wage rate anyway, like $17 an hour.
Right.
So if you think about it, for a college student that's got an MIT tuition bill, $17 an hour college student part-time jobs are not easy to find, right? So, it depends on what market you're in as to whether there's a challenge to finding qualified personnel in Massachusetts, and in particularly in the Metro Boston area. My experience is that the cannabis retailers are not having a problem getting good personnel.
Oh, great.
For
then
the
it's
most part.
then it's a challenge of training and training and more training.
Yeah, recruitment is one issue. Retention is another. Look, you can bring in qualified people, but by the nature of the business, right? Are they going to be punctual? Are they going to be professional?
Yeah.
Are they going to learn about the products and convey that knowledge in the right kind of interaction? So retention is another issue. But if I could just touch quickly too on the point, Dave, you were making about planning and business plans and going beyond the colors of the brand. One thing that's been missing that we have found as a big opportunity with our business, and that's across the value chain, is that it's missing a lot of the traditional standard operating procedures that are required of any industry that's as dynamic as the cannabis industry is and is getting. And I think that groups like us that come from 25 or 30 years of management consulting experience helping innovators in other industries stand up their businesses can offer that kind of expertise. And I think that a lot of the cannabis companies are now realizing the value of strategic planning. And that includes strategic planning around the whole life cycle of the customer experience. So looking at your retail operation, planning out from when they arrive in the parking lot, or even before that, how they're engaging in the marketing facilitation, whether it's online or it's a billboard or it's an event in the community, mapping out from the get-go, the end-to-end touch point life cycle of how your customer becomes aware of your business, understands the distinctions between your retail store and competitors, and then every touch point at the moment that they arrive in the parking lot through to the follow-up after their visit and the ongoing engagement through, email marketing, a good informative
text-based, whatever,
special events, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Art. I think so many, and this goes beyond just the cannabis business, but I think, from a retail perspective, they're not really thinking about, what does that journey look like, right? And that's incredibly important. As someone that ran a digital marketing company, it's kind of in my blood, but there's a lot of companies out there that don't realize that it doesn't just start when they walk in the door. It starts before that, right?
It's too late by the time they walk in the door.
You're right.
The ship has sailed when they're in your store if you haven't gotten it all together.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, if it isn't a fully connected loop, right? You could set up the brand promise in advance of the first visit really well. Mm-hmm. So there's an expectation that's built in.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And then they get to the store and their questions aren't answered and they're more puzzled about what product's going to work for them, or they wait too long in the queue line and the security guy, because it's a contracted security company, not a direct employer of the dispensary, has got an attitude that day. I mean, there's all these disconnects that can happen if the company isn't managing everybody, their employees and their contractors, to support that brand touch point sequence. And the only way to be able to manage all of that is to start with the right plan.
So now I'm feeling guilty. You're a management consultant. We haven't even talked about management structure and what kind of skill sets you need to grow, because it's easy to have one dispensary. Having 10 is another world. But we don't have too much time left. But let me just throw that out at you. And quickly, what would be the sort of the skill sets that a company should be thinking about that you see to bring in, and what tends to be missing in these skill sets? As opposed to someone, I have passion for this industry. That seems to be what I hear mostly.
Well, I mean, passion's important, obviously.
Yes.
If passion is authentic, right? I mean, after all, a good brand when it really sticks, it's because it's been personified through the people that are behind the creation of the brand. And that becomes an osmotic experience on the part of the customer at every touch point. So, passion, you can't, let's not underestimate the importance of passion, but passion without a plan and expertise is just passion that's not going to go anywhere.
Yep.
I think the skills that they need is, you need to have somebody who understands operations. And it doesn't have to necessarily be retail operations, but it has to be operations in which there is a life cycle sequence to running the business, both on the operational side and on the customer interaction side. Okay.
Mhm.
The second thing is you do need an IT expert, because the technology is changing quickly in this business. There's some terrific innovators who have come into this space, many of them with long histories of being successful in other industries, that are retrofitting their applications for every aspect of operations in the cannabis industry, on the growth end, right, on the ag science end, on the seed management and genetics end, as well as on the retail and distribution and everything else in between. So you need IT expertise. I think you also have to have somebody that understands the nuances and the dynamics of supply chain management. Because I'll tell you, in Massachusetts, one of the challenges has been that the consumer demand has evolved so quickly. It's gotten way ahead of the installed production capacity in the state. And the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission is trying to help correct that imbalance. In other words, we've got way too many cannabis customers demanding all kinds of product that the local retailers do not have enough supply to serve. And that's getting corrected.
Yeah, that's a chronic thing. Yeah, for sure.
It's a chronic thing. But even when it does get corrected and it gets balanced out, you're still going to need to have expertise around someone in the company that knows how to work with, develop good mutual relationships with your suppliers, knows how to negotiate, knows how to deliver value so that it's a win-win relationship, because supplier relationships are going to increasingly be critical to the competitiveness of retailers and their ability to maintain customer loyalty.
Well, Art, I'm going to have to jump in there. I know you have tons more. There's probably a few more players we're missing, but we're going to have to jump in here. I've been talking to Art Stewart, Impact Partners, management consulting firm. If you want to learn more, www.bringchangenow.com. That's bringchangenow.com, which is kind of a cool name. Art, that was really interesting. Thanks very much. A lot to think about. We're going to have you back on the show, and we're going to just pick it up where we left off.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here.
Business of Cannabis is brought to you by CashTech Currency Products, North America's leading cash management provider for cannabis retailers. Cash recyclers, smart safes, software and services. CashTech has everything the cannabis retailer needs to track, manage, and secure the cash earned in the dispensary. Don't take chances with your cash. Call Cash. So that's our show for today. We've had Laura Bradley from Behind the Bend, and which I think is behind her cannabis dispensary, The Bend. It took me a while to figure that out, but by the end of it, I had. And Art Stewart from Strategic Impact Partners. So thoughts. Let's start with Laura. This idea of cannabis lounges and how that, how that will, what the future holds for them, and is that going to be actually the golden goose for retail?
Well, I think I honestly think she's on the right track. I think, the problem that a lot of people have is, how do I buy? How do I consume? And, she seems to like hit all the right notes. So I think, for her and her business, I think they're like on the right track for sure.
Yes, and so like it's so much in cannabis, great ideas meet great regulation and law and prohibition. So while in some states, California, so on, it's viable. Large scale, maybe not so much in other places. So before you open up your lounge, know what you're doing before you invest a ton of money. Sure. But having said that, it's a pretty, when you turn your mind to it, I can go get my cannabis, but that's not the most important. Not that, where I buy my alcohol, it's a business, obviously, but is it the most lucrative side of it? Making the alcohol and where you consume it is where the money is. I don't know. It's I never really reflected on it, but if you add in music and events and food and hanging out with your friends and late night and weekends, and it might be, a blended thing too. I thought, okay, it's 2 p.m. I don't really need a lounge desperately, but Sunday afternoon, I want to watch football. Maybe I do.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. And we interviewed Planet 13. They're in Vegas. And the second one, I believe, was in California. And they're definitely on that track, which is trying to make it an entertainment destination. That is where cannabis is just part of it. And maybe not even the most important part of it.
Yeah.
Just part of it.
Yeah.
Vegas being a unique location, maybe, but they certainly have a vision. And Art Stewart, who raised a lot of the complexity of it, the challenges of the retail, but also the opportunity that's there for people to do it right. That's what I thought of. And the challenge of doing that from the right business plan, which is not atypical for a consultant to tell us the business case, the business plan, but then all the way through to what happens when that individual walks in the store, that magic moment.
I think that's kind of the big deal for me is, okay, so you get someone to your store. Now what? How do you educate them? How do you bring them along? So that's like an important part for me.
Yeah, as we talk to people on this show, I think people, I don't want to insult anyone, but lip service is paid to that.
Yep.
But I don't know how often the experience at the dispensary is much more than this is what my store looks like, and order something and then leave and let someone else order something. And hopefully that happens a lot so I can make some money.
Yep.
The bigger picture is hard to actually make it happen. And it's expensive, which is the worst part of it. Because the Planet 13 experience does not come cheap.
No.
You have 10,000 square feet of lights and music and product, and it's organized chaos, or even creating a lounge with food and maybe a dispensary there and different areas, designated areas, and policing that and making it pleasant. But if it was easy, sure. But maybe cannabis has gotten to the point where the easy stuff is done, and we're getting more to we're, like, as Art said, it's a real business now. It's no different.
Yeah.
than if you're selling, I don't know, socks and t-shirts on some level. Maybe a little different. Maybe a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. Unfortunately, we have to say goodbye. Always a bittersweet moment for us. Don't despair. We will be back. So that's the sweet part. But we do need to let you get on with your day or night, depending on, I guess, where you're listening to this. And don't despair if you miss an episode, even though there's really no good reason to do that. But all's forgiven. And besides, all the previous shows are accessible through the Haze Radio website. And they're also available on iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Google Play, all the usual suspects. Thanks again to our sponsors, Cash Tech Currency Products. They're the ones who keep all that cash you're making counted, sorted, and safe. This is David Sky with Matt Cook. And this is